much. I now turn to the Association pour les victimes du monde.
Thank you, Chair. The former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has said that UPR has the potential to promote human rights in the darkest corner of the world. Sri Lanka is one of these dark corners. During the last 3 cycles of UPR, this council highlighted many of the violations occurring in Sri Lanka, but regrettably progress stalled there for Eelam Tamils. Without effective follow-up mechanism, the UPR's potential to promote human rights is significantly diminished, and countries like Sri Lanka can continue to ignore their obligations. We are concerned at the recent genocide of Tamils that ended in May 2009. Sri Lankan government killed more than 146 people in 6 months. UN mechanism failed to protect Eelam Tamils from genocide. Even in Europe, there are many living witness of genocide against Eelam Tamil from July 1983 by Sri Lankan military and Sri Lankan state. Families that have lost members to incidents of extrajudicial killings are dependent on political willingness to have the individual cases investigated and prosecuted. The ICCPR, to which the government of Sri Lanka is a party, quite clearly says in Article 1, all people have the right of self-determination. The terrible massacre of Eelam Tamils by the armed forces of Sri Lanka amounting to genocide forcefully justifies the right of self-determination of Eelam Tamils. Unfortunately, during the last 3 cycles of UPR, the recommendations were formulated too general or too wide that the state concerned alleged that those recommendations are being implemented at the time within the state. We have also witnessed that Sri Lanka have not implemented most of its accepted recommendations from the last 3 cycles.
Thank you very much. ABC Tamil Oli.
Thank you, Madam President. During the last Universal Periodic Review on Sri Lanka in November 2017, all Tamils expect more recommendations from the state's recommenders, but members and observers of this council totally failed to take awareness on Tamil genocide in the island. We are more than 5 years since the passing of the resolution on Sri Lanka 31. The government of Sri Lanka had agreed upon various post-war measures that would help bring a political solution closer and render justice to the Tamil victims. To this day, this promise remains a mirage. The Sri Lankan armed forces have exclusively grabbed the land of the Tamils in the north and east and prevent them from resetting even after ending the war 11 years ago. The Tamils still lodging in mass shift camps. Abolish the Prevention of Terrorism Act or Counter-Terrorism Act. Both are used against Eelam Tamil nation in the island. We ask this council to hold an international judicial process under the control of the OHCHR, and we request you to recommend the referral to the International Criminal Court or Special Tribunal for Sri Lanka. We request you to take measures to judicially address the genocide against the Tamil people.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Tourner la page.
Thank you, Chair. For UPR to be the robust mechanism which makes a sustainable difference, it is of great importance for the state to really implement the recommendation by their support. The principles set down in the Charter of United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, as well as the World Conference Against Racism and the 2019 Durban Review Conference have done nothing to relieve our plight of institutional and direct discrimination against indigenous people. The denial of right to self-determination on grounds of racial discrimination is recognized as a crime against humanity, well utilized in South Africa, Namibia, and former Rhodesia and Zimbabwe. They must apply for Tamil Eelam, Alaska, Hawaii, and several indigenous cases who were under Article 73 of the Charter as non-self-governing territories. Paragraphs 5 and 6 of the Durban Review Outcome document calls upon states to create political will to address the colonization and foreign occupations. Your words mean nothing is you sitting on the panel to not make the recommendation to address this discrimination against indigenous people, especially those of us who are denied self-determination on the ground of racial discrimination. The right of non-discrimination is also political.
We're now turning to Jubilee campaign. They're not here. Tamil Usagam.
Thank you, Chair. The studies of UPR show that around 19% of the states that have already implemented some of the expect recommendation of the past 3 cycles had been able to improve the situation of human rights in their countries in some measure. Unfortunately, the Sri Lanka state is an example of those 10% who had only accepted the recommendation on paper and has done very little regarding their implementation. The situation of human rights is deteriorating for all Tamil nations who are living under military occupation. Sri Lanka had committed to return a civilian lands occupied by its military force during the last UPR cycles in November 2017. Land are still occupied. PTA is still on action. Cultural and democratical genocide is ongoing. Occupation of Eelam Tamil's land, militarization of the North and East administration. It is in this context that Sri Lanka must immediately realize all the civilian lands, the inequality, compensate their families for pushing them out of their own lands and separating them from a culture and history. The armed force, which have created havoc in their areas for the last 9 years, must leave the Tamil.
Thank you very much. So, the next speaker will be the Association de Solidarité Internationale pour l'Afrique.
Thank you, Chair. During the last Universal Periodic Review on Sri Lanka last November 2017, all Tamil expect for recommendation from the state of recommenders, but the member and observer of this council totally failed to take awareness on Tamil genocide in the island. During the genocidal war against Eelam Tamil in the island of Sri Lanka, and in May 2009, more than 100,000 people were killed and 146,679 people were encountered. For only in the Valley, that too. Only during the last 7 months for the war, from December 2008 and May 2009. The releasing of Tamil Civilian Island, the repeal of the Prevention of the Terrorism Act, and it is replacement by the legislation that the fully compliant with human rights standards. Each of these issues involve the questions of basic right and thus the continued failure to achieve progress in fully addressing them constitution denial of justice. As Sri Lanka has not shown any commitment towards implement any of the promise made to the UN and international community. It is high time that UN High Commissioner for Human Rights refers Sri Lanka to